super excited today. We've got the wonderful Sophie Allen, who is Business Director at Venatrix. How are you doing, Sophie?
I am very well, thank you, James. Very excited to be here. We are live and kicking. I can't believe how many people have joined the event already. So super excited and can't wait to get cracking with it.
Yeah, me too. So give us a little bit of a spill of like where you're dialing in from and what is it that you do and what do Venatrix do?
So I am dialing in from the south of France. I'm based here and I work remotely, which is very exciting. Venatrix, for those of you who don't know, but I'm sure most people do because we are very, very active on LinkedIn, is an SDR assessment, placement, and training organization for the SaaS industry. So we essentially work with SaaS businesses of all shapes and sizes, whether that's one-man band startups all the way up to the big US unicorns, and we help them hire superstar SDRs into their sales teams.
Fantastic. And it's fair to say, literally, this event would not exist without the inspiration from Venatrix. And together, over the last almost 4 years now, we're actually into our 5th year of a partnership.
Yeah.
We've been helping promote and elevate the SDR function. I mean, you must have seen it transform in the last 5 years, Sophie. Do you feel that there's more and more importance put on the SDR as a function?
More and more importance, and also more and more appetite from people leaving university or people that have already got jobs to really want to dive into this as their career choice. So back in the day, we used to really have to sell the concept of working in sales to potential candidates. And now it is actually one of the most popular career choices that people want to do when leaving university, or people wanting that have already been working want to change into.
That's really interesting. And
Yeah.
something to highlight, while it might be the most popular now industry that people want to get into, all you wonderful people on this call today are in the industry already, but we can also put our hands up and recognize how hard it actually is to be an SDR on the front line. And that's why we put this event together. So I can see we've got Alex, Brian, Kesa, Holly dialing in. Good to say hi. Please introduce yourself in the comments and let us know where you're dialing in from so we can say hello and get some interaction going in the comment section. What I would say is that it's really important that you invest in your self-development and invest in developing yourself. And so that's why we put such an importance on this event and to do it regularly. And in fact, later in the year, we're going to be doing an in-person SDR event in August. So we're going to get people back out together. But just before I do that, I want to highlight something that's available to everybody. There's actually a free sales confidence membership area that has been created and empowered by Venatrix. So I'm sharing that on the screen now, and you can just see where we're highlighting different areas of development. So you can come into this membership. It doesn't matter if you're a networker or you're SDR in your first week or first month, or an SDR in week 2, month 2, or you're 6 months into a year into being an SDR. We've got hundreds and hundreds of recorded videos which are available for you to come on and learn about different industry experts, different product tips, mental well-being, whatever it is, whatever skill you're trying to improve, from video skills, from storytelling. Because of the relationship we've got with Venatrix, you can get access to these free videos and access this for free. So I'll put the link in the comments and you can share and access and have a play around with this after today's event. So back to today, and I'm hugely excited to give you a rundown on the format of this event. So what will happen is each speaker we invite up to the stage will get 7 minutes to deliver some actionable, inspirational insights. So this is insights that will empower you, that I believe whoever is talking today, if you take notes, you will get some golden nuggets that you can use in your day-to-day and implement them immediately today or tomorrow, depending on what time zone. And I can see people dialing in from around the world. So hello, Jamie. Hello, Oliver. Hi, Harrison. Good to see you all dialing on. Keep the comments coming. Let us know where you're dialing in from. So first up, I'm going to invite our first speaker up, and then we're going to take it in turns. So Sophie and I will make introductions, and then Sophie will handle the panel discussion at the end. Please do ask questions during the discussion, but note, because the speakers are super focused on delivering value, they won't be able to answer your question until later on, or when they finish the talk, they can answer the question in the comments. So this is all good. So Sophie, I'm going to put you back behind the stage, and then we're going to kick off. Is that okay?
Thank you, James. That's perfect.
Amazing. Looking forward to it. Super excited.
Let's
go, go, go. So here we go. I'm ready to invite our first speaker up. His name is Armani Saunders. He's Business Development Representative at Paddle. He's going to be talking about personalization, perseverance, and personal growth. So talking about the benefits of personal outreach, the importance of perseverance, and the importance of personal growth in general, which we should all be thinking about. Armani earned a first-class bachelor's in law, in fact, from the University of Durham, and initially embarked on a career in law before discovering SaaS sales. He joined Paddle, which is a complete provider of payments infrastructure for SaaS companies, and he's actually dialing in from Malmo, Sweden to do this. He's currently at an event, which is pretty cool. He joined Paddle in May last year as a BDR, moved into a strategic BDR role earlier this year, and now is the current BDR team lead, managing a team.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me, James. As you said, I'm currently at a SaaS conference in Malmo, Sweden, and I've had to run back to my hotel room. So apologies in advance for any Wi-Fi issues or if I just lose my train of thought. So my name's Armani. I'm the BDR team leader here at Paddle, and we're essentially a payments platform for SaaS businesses. I also work in the strategic team as a BDR, so focusing on our larger clients. I previously worked in SMB and then mid-market over the past 12 months. I mainly speak to C-suite level personas, so CFOs, CEOs, and CROs. Today, I want to talk to you about 3 things that I think are super important as a BDR at any stage of your career, but also as a successful business person in general. They are personalization, perseverance, and personal growth. It's an amalgamation of everything that I've learned from some excellent people in sales, and I think there's some really, really useful stuff. So I'll jump straight into personalization. So the average decision maker is getting hundreds of emails every day. So the key question is, how do you stand out consistently? There's no debate that personalization is better than not personalizing. Personalized emails are 6 times more likely to be replied to than non-personalized emails. The debate lies in the cost benefit of writing a dissertation for every prospect just for the email to bounce or for it to be bad timing. There's definitely a middle ground, and that's what I want to dive into today. So I've been experimenting since Q4 last year, setting a timer for my emails. There's a concept called Parkinson's law that essentially explains the amount of time you attribute to something is how long it will take you, right? If you give yourself the weekend to clean your room, it will take you the whole weekend. If you give yourself 2 hours, it'll probably take you closer to 2 hours. So the same applies for these personalized emails. How many of you have spent hours crafting the perfect email for a prospect, finding every piece of information you can about them just for the email to bounce or for them to have integrated something else, right? We've all been there. So time spent emailing and personalizing those emails has diminishing returns on either end. But I think somewhere between 6 to 12 minutes is the sweet spot. We actually did an exercise in my team last week where what we did is we'd all write an email to the same persona with a 6-minute timer on. We then presented them back and talked about how we went about constructing the email and the ways we found the information. It was interesting because the time limit meant only relevant stuff was included. The email was worded succinctly, and it made the email much more about the prospect, as there wasn't time to add a list of all of our features and benefits. Give this a go for yourself. Set a timer for 6 minutes, do all the research you can on a prospect for an email. It might be difficult at first, but if you can crack it, you can essentially write 10 super personalized emails an hour. Even if you only did 2 hours of emails a day, that's 100 super personalized emails a week. You do that for 6 months, that's almost 2,500 personalized emails. There's no way you're not going to book meetings out of that. I know what you're thinking though, in the short term, what if I'm writing all of these amazing emails, but I'm not seeing any results because they're not even getting read by my audience? This is where you've got to start thinking creatively and outside of the box. If someone was trying to grab your attention, what would be the best way to do it? The difficulty is people are receptive to different things. Some people love videos, some people love emails, Others will only listen if you literally turn up at their office. The only way to be consistent across all of these personality types is to vary your approach. We're really fortunate here at Paddle that we get a lot of autonomy with our outreach. We're able to incorporate really cool products like Reach Desk, which lets you send personalized gifts and direct mails to prospects. Videos are great, but if you spend ages making one and the prospect doesn't open it, it might not be an efficient use of your time. One of my personal favorite alternatives is a personalized gift software called Vidu. What you can do is essentially create an individual gift for a prospect and generate it in under 10 seconds. You can include a message, pose with a photo of their website, or just create an eye-catching meme that summarizes your value prop. It's the epitome of personalization at scale. Hit on my man, William Holding, on LinkedIn if you want some more info on that. But there's also a free trial that you can just get started with. Myself and my team have had some amazing results just from adding one video into our sequences. Recently, a couple of my colleagues, Aaron and Roisin, handwrote 50 letters and sent them around the world. They then followed up with a photo of the note, and they got some really, really good results. I'm also a big fan of the Diver CEO podcast, and Karen Brady was on there recently. She said that whenever she hears the word no, she interprets it as try a different way to get to your goal. So anytime you get a rejection or don't get a reply from a prospect, try a different approach that's a bit more outside of the box and see what the results are. But the bottom line is be creative and original, but still keep your output high enough to account for all the different variables. The second big thing that I want to speak about today is perseverance. How do we keep motivated when things just aren't going our way? Which I promise you at some point in sales, they won't go your way. Some days you're going to put in 110% effort and see nothing. Others, you'll just have good things fall into your lap. We work in an industry where the fruits of your labor are often not reaped when you plant the seeds. The Pareto 80-20 principle is a really good example of this. It's the concept that 80% of your results come from 20% of your work. In other words, a lot of the work that you're doing might not directly result in progression towards your targets. This sounds demotivating off the bat, but what I want to encourage you to do is shift your mindset away from those targets in a sort of way and to reframe what winning and losing looks like for you. We talk a lot at Paddle about process and focusing on your day-to-day. When I moved into an outbound role, I started with speaking to people who had been successful in the role previously. I asked how many calls did they do? How many emails did they send? How many meetings did they have to hit their target? I worked off those numbers and wrote down my own targets for every day at the start of the day. You essentially want to aim to become that person who won't finish the day until that list is complete. What you'll actually find is if you define the parameters of your day, you'll know what success for that day looks like. When you look at work like this, you shift your focus from a very results-orientated approach to a process-orientated one. You start to understand that 20% of your work that will contribute to that 80% of results will come when it comes, as long as you maintain those standards that you've set for yourself. You become less susceptible then to being demotivated when things aren't going your way, and ultimately are more capable of persevering. You're probably thinking, what happens if I do all of this stuff and I still don't see results? Firstly, take a step back, manage the manageables, control the controllables. It sounds cliche, but I'm always asking myself, am I contacting the right people and the right companies? Am I contacting enough people? Is the quality of those contacts high enough? Okay, how can I improve the calls that I'm making? Probably by watching more people do calls, by getting advice on LinkedIn, maybe by coming to one of James's sales confidence talks. Also checking, am I getting the right coaching? Do I fully understand the value prop and what I'm selling? You've got to be asking yourself these questions regularly, as they are the things that are within your control. The best people in sales are confident enough in their ability to deliver results because they know that their processes are solid and will get them that 80% in the end. That's how they're able to persevere when the going gets tough. Process leads me really nicely on to the final section on personal growth. The best way to build these processes is to check in with yourself on a weekly basis. As of today, I want you to think of yourself as the CEO of your own company. And the product you're selling is the most valuable product you will ever develop, your own personal growth. I want you to set yourself goals to achieve X by Y day and plan out a process. On a weekly basis, check in with how you've performed against those goals. Invest in yourself on a consistent basis, whether that be training courses, market research, coaching, or scheduling time with senior leaders. Track how you're performing against these goals. But also don't forget to give yourself credit for the journey that you're on. It's easy to feel comparatively weaker compared to people in your team, but there are a whole host of variables in sales that we don't know that are impacting things. We're all in sales because we're hungry, we're competitive, and we're driven. And sometimes that can mean always rushing forward into the next month or quarter and not just taking a moment to look back on what we've achieved. Learn to change the narrative of failure from a negative to a positive learning experience. Fail fast and fail often is a term often used around startups to explain how failure can help you learn things much quicker than success can. So my bottom line and kind of key takeaway from all of this is, if you go away today and design a repeatable process, you stick with it for 12 months through the setbacks, the failures, and the doubts, I promise that you're going to be successful. You're going to make yourself and your company a lot of money. You're going to get promoted, and you're going to feel like you're growing into a much better person. Please drop me a connection on LinkedIn. I'm happy to discuss any of this in more detail. But otherwise, thank you so much for your time. Cheers, guys.
Thank you so much, Amarni. That was fantastic. What a great start. And it's also amazing to see how far you have progressed since we placed you at Paddle last May. So well done. Looking forward to asking you some questions all about that later. So the next speaker that we have got is Amy McElroy, who is Intro Hive's Business Development Manager and also a Venatrix superstar. So Amy joined Intro Hive a year ago. And for those of you that don't know, Intro Hive is a market-leading revenue acceleration platform that was recently ranked in Deloitte's top Fast 50. So Amy's background wasn't in sales. Her parents are both lawyers, and her previous experience was in hospitality. But as soon as she got placed at Intro Hive, she quickly got the passion and skills to be super successful in her role. And now she's doing absolutely fantastically. So Amy, I would like to welcome you to the stage, the digital stage. So Amy's going to be giving us a talk that is going to focus on the discovery part of the sales process and how to act fast during cold calling. So Amy, over to you.
Perfect. I'm going to do that really annoying thing and ask if people can see my screen when I try and share it, because I have never used Hopin before. But if I try now...
if you need help.
Nope. Wait 1 second. Sorry, everyone.
That's all right.
Share. Okay. I think Chrome tab. Window.
Yeah, select the Chrome tab window.
1 second. Sorry, I think I just opened a new tab and it's not picked it up yet for some reason. I'm sure everyone's used to this by now. Chrome tab. Let's see. Google Slides. Okay. Share.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yes, we can. You're all good.
Perfect. I'm not even going to bother putting it on slideshow mode because I think we're just going to enter new issues there. Anyway, thank you so much for the introduction, Sophie. Really appreciate that. So yeah, as Sophie said, my name's Amy McElroy. I work at Intro Hive and I have been here for a year now. And that this is my first sales job as well. So I actually predominantly prospect into law firms. So maybe I should chat to Armani after this because he'll, I'm sure, have a lot of experience with that. But I also have some experience prospecting into a number of different industries. So I've been to some tech conferences and real estate events as well. So hopefully what I'm saying today is not kind of only working for one industry. But essentially, the topic of my talk today is going to be how to identify pain and do so really quickly, because it's super important as a BDR. Because, you know, learning how to do discovery in a way that works and does so quickly and efficiently, but is also true to your communication style, is really important. And we're kind of going to be talking about that in the context of cold calling. So hopefully by the end of the session, you'll have a bit more insight into how to figure out your style. So some key takeaways from what I'm presenting today is hopefully going to be the importance of discovering pain really quickly, what not to do. I'm going to be talking a bit about my own personal experience there. how to develop your own technique through kind of having a whole learning process, and also how to build a formula that prioritizes pain and value, and that actually quite neatly kind of packaged itself into 4 Ps. So for this discussion about discovery, I'm going to be talking quite specifically about how to do so effectively when making cold calls. So as I'm sure we all know, cold calling is one of the most important skills to have as a BDR. And I, like I'm sure many others on this call, have been quite guilty of neglecting them at times, especially coming from a generation that gets scared to phone the doctor by yourself, never mind calling up a complete stranger. But unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you view it, cold calling is still one of the fastest ways of growing pipeline and qualifying in or out super quickly. So if you're lucky, a prospect will give you a few minutes, which means you need to be able to begin the discovery process super quickly so that you can understand pain and then build enough value to have a follow-up conversation. So at IntraHive, we kind of always say, lose quickly, lose cheaply. And this has kind of become one of our standard mottos. And it applies really strongly to cold calling, I think, because, you know, you only have a few hours in a day where it's polite to cold call someone at work. And even then, your prospect may not agree. So really make the most of the time that you do have. If I move on now to the past mistakes that I made, as you can see here, this is me taking the legal world by storm from a young age. But if we maybe don't look quite as far back as that and look back to my introduction to the world of sales last year. So like probably every other new BDR, I was pretty awful at cold calling when I first started. And after about one sentence, I was listing off every feature and function of IntraHive, whether people wanted to hear it or not. So honestly, I think my colleague Mason may be on this call, but if you want to ask him, I did one of my first ever cold call practices with him, and he will vouch for me. It was horrendous. But this just kind of meant that I had to go on a learning journey. So if we move on to kind of my learning process, it can be split into learning techniques for how I actually reach out to prospects, and also learning the industry that I'm working in and how it works as an ecosystem, so I know what I'm talking about. So if we start with technique, at IntraHive, we use Sandler training, but we do these sessions with the global team, majority of which is actually based in Canada. So our sales trainer is a Canadian man, and as you can see, I am not a Canadian man. So some of the general technique promoted doesn't really roll off my Scottish tongue naturally, but that just meant that I really needed to go searching for some different formats. And I came across Bilal on LinkedIn, who he's a huge sales influencer, so I'm sure loads of you will follow him already. But I came across his problem and provoke method, which really helps you to dive straight into discovery on a cold call. And I'm going to kind of loop back to that a bit later. So then if we move on to industry, so if I'm wanting to go into discovery quickly on a cold call, I need to actually understand some of the common pains within my industry so that I actually have content to speak about. So the way I kind of went about learning that was I went through, you know, previous meetings that people had here at IntraHive, and then kind of sat in on meetings myself. You know, here we use Gong, so that was a great way of actually seeing, you know, what questions people asked, what pains were coming up time and time again. And also LinkedIn has been super useful to me. So as you can kind of see here, I've got 2 screenshots. Instead of just looking at posts, I found that comment sections were super useful on LinkedIn. So, you know, these 2 people hadn't created posts themselves saying, you know, we have these issues, can anyone help? Instead, they were engaging with other people in the industry, and they were telling quite outrightly, like publicly, they were saying, here is one of my biggest challenges. And it so happens that this is one of my kind of key accounts, and this is a challenge that we can solve quite easily. And then once again here, you know, they're saying like, here's what's challenging. We've done this, but it's not like maybe working so well. And so then I've got the content to actually understand, okay, CRM managers are having trouble with this. People in market are having trouble with this. But yeah, also be just super open to kind of continuously learn. So if we move on to my current process, I've kind of combined a few different techniques with other people's advice and make sure that it suits my personality. So for each persona in the legal space, I basically identified the most common pain that they have. So when I mentioned Bilal's problem and provoke format, this pain would make up the problem part. So because I'm engaging in my industry and I can understand what legal marketers' pain is versus what legal IT's pain is, I can then use that for my problem statement. So stating this problem that resonates with your audience at the start is key. It shows you know their industry and their frustrations and can be a great way to quickly build trust because they feel like you know what they go through. So then moving on to the provoke section, I then identified a question that I could ask to understand how they're dealing with this pain. So asking a specific question based on the previous problem statement, it directs the conversation towards discovery and learning more about their business. Also just wanted to mention that continually updating your script based on trends in the market is super important. So one of my colleagues and I, we actually made a cadence of emails and cold call script as well around the Great Resignation, because it was something that we were seeing continual kind of posts about, continual engagement about in the space. So kind of strike while the iron's hot, and added that in as well. So if I then move on to kind of an example of how I'd put this into practice. So this is what I was meaning about 4 Ps. So we've got pattern, interrupt, permission, problem, and provoke. Now these 2 are kind of standard things within cold calling. And then we've got these problem and provoke sections here. And if I just give you a bit of an example around this, funnily enough, I actually just saw Sophie's post this morning about how she was saying she's not quite a big fan of this is a cold call and things like that. But that's the whole point, isn't it? You try different things that work for you, and based on your personality, your delivery, different things will reap different results for individuals, because it's a human industry, isn't it? So one of my examples is for business development in law firms. And so I'd start with my pattern interrupt. So this is a cold call, or you're not expecting my call. And then ask for permission. Do you have even a minute to talk? Tonality is quite key there. And then we move on to the problem. So warm referrals are the most effective way of winning new business, but we see that law firms often don't have an effective way of tracking firm-wide relationships. And then to follow that up, we're going to provoke to get the conversation flowing. So how are you currently tracking relationships in order to increase the success of your work winning process? So that's kind of an example for that one persona. Anyway, to move on to our kind of key takeaways, because I'm coming to the end now. So hopefully from this talk, you've kind of understood a bit about the importance of discovering pain quickly, what not to do, how to develop your own personal techniques, and then how to build a formula that prioritizes pain and value. And thank you very much for all listening to me. And if you want to connect on LinkedIn, this is me. Sorry, I'm pointing at another screen. But yeah, this is me. Connect with me there. If you want to continue the conversation, let's do it. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being online, Amy, and thanks for having such a structured and organised talk track. Really helpful and some good, thoughtful, thought-provoking as well conversation. So thanks very much for that.
Thanks.
So I'm going to invite our next speaker up. We're just going to test. Em, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
We got the technology working. I'm going to give you a super introduction. So, Murwarid Laly is Senior Digital Solutions Sales Executive at ServiceNow. She's going to be talking about leveraging the power of your network, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, being an internal champion builder, and playing to your strengths. She also goes by Em. So Em has been in sales for almost 4 years, having fallen into it with some relevant experience via the hospitality industry, a little like Amy. She joined ServiceNow in her current role in November last year, having previously held roles with Bring and Datto. And ServiceNow is a cloud-based platform and solutions company which helps digitalize and unify organizations. so that they can find smarter, faster, better ways to enable workflow. I'm going to leave you to your 7 minutes. Best of luck, and I'm glad you're here with us.
Amazing, thank you. So hey everyone, I'm Murwarid. So when I was asked to speak to you all today, I'm going to be super honest, I was pretty terrified. What could I say that could be of value? So I went round and asked a few people in the office what they thought my strengths were and what I could share with a group of aspiring sales reps. And time after time, the response was about building internal champions. For someone like me who will talk to everyone, this might come naturally. I'm comfortable with reaching out, which in turn leads me to form strong bonds at work. A lot of what I say might sound really obvious, but in reality, most salespeople don't do this stuff well. And as much as speaking to customers, a sales job is all about managing internal processes, and therefore an extremely important aspect of our jobs. It's all about controlling the narrative with people you work with. And a lot of the time, that means having to be brave and bold. That's why I've chosen to echo and speak around a piece of advice that my mentor, who I know is on the call, hello, always pushed me to live by, which has been by far the most valuable thing to learn to do as part of my sales career. And that's getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. This means putting yourself in situations that don't come naturally to you and that you can learn from. That's also part of the reason I'm here today. As I imagine, like many others, doing a talk like this is very much out of my comfort zone, but I believe there's a lot I can learn from it and hopefully some value I can share with you all today. So I'd like to break down this theme of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable into two different aspects of our lives as sales reps. The first being through bettering ourselves to do our jobs more effectively, and the second being to build our brands internally. This doesn't mean to have a good brand, you have to be a LinkedIn sales influencer. I, for one, know that's not where my strengths and interests lie, but it's more about finding what you're good at and where you can add value within your organization. So if we look at point one, bettering ourselves to do our jobs more effectively. Organizations are always on the lookout for people that are hungry to learn. And the only way we can keep getting better is to understand our weaknesses as well as our strengths. You have all heard the term thrown in at the deep end. And let me tell you, I have had my fair share of this that at first mortified me. But as soon as I learned that failing fast and learning from my mistakes was the thing that made me learn the fastest, the more I did it, the better I handled those situations. It can seem very daunting. Naturally, we want to go onto a call and be perfect. But in reality, sometimes we mess up, and just know that's okay. The best thing we can do is learn and develop from our experiences and hold ourselves accountable to our own success. We can do this in a few ways. Practice your pitch with a colleague, set up 15 minutes after a call to ask for feedback. If you've drafted a really killer email, ask for some honest advice. Finally, give yourself credit for what you smashed, but always look to how you can better yourself and how to go that next level up. So these are all things that don't come naturally a lot of the time, but getting comfortable with doing activities like these allows you to be the best sales rep you can be. We can also look at it from a higher level, which mostly comes from trying new things. For example, working at different size organizations gives you exposure to different environments and skills. Challenging yourself by working a new solution set or industry, or if you have the opportunity to, even working on a new market. Doing all of these things for me personally not only exposed me to different ways of working outside of what I was used to, but challenged me and made me learn where my interests lie. So moving over to the second topic, internal champion building and building your personal brand within your organization. So we all know the power of networking. The way I landed my first sales role was following a conversation I got into whilst working in the pub with someone who actually happened to be the CEO of a small local tech provider. This was a relationship that I formed really naturally that ended up starting my whole journey into tech sales. So why then, when we're within an organization, does it have to be any different? We're surrounded by amazingly successful people that we can learn so much from. Getting exposure by meeting people from different teams unlocks so much potential. You eventually find people that have the same interests as you. For example, if there's an initiative you want to run or a change you want to make in the organization, it's invaluable to find like-minded people. There's so much power in having confidence to meet people and to talk to people and to challenge the norm. Actually, very recently, I was struggling with getting access into one of my accounts. After going on a LinkedIn stalk, I found a new sales director in my organization who knew the CIO of the business. I found the aligned SDR to the team, found out where that director was sitting in the office, and as soon as they returned from a meeting, pounced on them to say hello, and in fact told them they'd been victim of my stalk. So even though this may have been awkward as hell, I met a new director who I now have a great relationship with, but I also got a warm introduction into my contact. So I'd say my top 3 tips of ways to build your brand include joining different groups across the organization, whether it's to do with an interest, a hobby, or an initiative. So I always knew I was the type of person that loved bringing people together. So being the persona of a culture champion was something that really excited me. A huge perk of working in a startup meant this wasn't an organization that existed. So I championed the value of running team events, found budgets, and ran them. Having joined a bigger organization, however, where there's already an established group, I immediately got involved and ran our first Headshots to Help initiative, where we organized for a professional photographer to come into the office to give people a refresh on their LinkedIn photos in exchange for a donation. Not only did we raise a ton of money, but I got the chance to meet 80 new people that I wouldn't usually cross paths with. The second is leveraging people's expertise in the business. If you hear on a call that someone's done something great, message them, ask them about it. If someone's booked a meeting in a really creative way, ask them how and what they did. Be seen to always want to learn and get better, and take the blockers out of your mind of being afraid of seniority, because the further you go up in the organization, the further the execs are from the detail. And this is what they really need to know to run the organization effectively. The final is changing the flow, being a challenger and sharing what you know. We're all good at something. Share this with others. Is your new organization trying to do something you've been through in the past with another company? Share your learnings. Work collaboratively across teams. Granted, some organizations will allow you to do this more than others, but I found that a great example of a link to form is between sales and marketing. Communication about what you're seeing in the market, because you guys are the ones out there on the phones having conversations every day. So feedback how best they can support you further this. It's important to always be thinking, what can I do to make my boss's job easier? And what great ideas do I have that can help the business? Always share them. Sales reps, just like you, have an immense amount of opportunity to make an impact. Find what excites you and what you're good at by putting yourself in new situations, and make relationships to get your ideas heard. I want you all to go away later today to think about one thing you've been really nervous to do, and come in tomorrow and just do it. And then maybe message me on LinkedIn and let me know how it went. But don't be scared. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Em. That was super open, honest, and authentic. So I know everybody will have really appreciated that talk. So our next superstar speaker that I would like to invite to our digital stage today is Chloe Kelleher, who is a senior SDR at mental health SaaS company Spill. So have we got Chloe joining us? Here she is. Hi, Chloe. So Chloe is a fellow Manchester University graduate like me, and she always knew that she really wanted to work for an organisation with a purpose. She started her career at an edtech platform called Cognizant that helps businesses find learning needs within employees, and then she joined Spill, which is where she works now as a senior SDR. Chloe is building the SDR team from scratch at Spill. So let me know if you need any help with that, Chloe. And she is going to talk to us today about a very important topic that we see loads of people posting about on LinkedIn literally all the time: imposter syndrome. And she's going to talk about her own experience of self-doubt, overcoming obstacles, and how she deals with the imposter syndrome in her role. So without further ado, over to you, Chloe.
Hello, everybody. It's so great to be here. I've got some slides that worked quite easily, which is nice and smooth, unlike normal. So same as Em, I thought, what can I give that's going to be of value to other people? And since working for a company specialized in mental health, I've learned a lot about imposter syndrome and my experiences with it, and even realizing that I even experienced imposter syndrome myself. But what I'm going to talk about is, what is it? I'm not an expert at all, but I'm going to talk about what Is it what I perceive it to be? Why I felt like this and how I felt like this, and also how I've managed it. So what is imposter syndrome? It's doubting your own abilities, not feeling good enough, having the belief that other people have inflated views of your ability, or feeling like a fraud. It's shocking that around 70% of people have reported these feelings, which is just crazy. I was completely unaware of how common these feelings were until I worked for a company specializing in mental health. So I can imagine that a lot of people on this webinar weren't aware of these super unhelpful thoughts and how often people feel them. So this is why I wanted to talk about my experiences, how I've dealt with them, and how I've managed them as well. So why have I felt like this? Why do salespeople feel like this? Why do people feel like this? There are definitely some reasons to do with childhood and the world as we see it today that I am no way near as experienced enough to talk about. But in terms of me and myself, every new job that I've had, I felt like this, some sort of self-doubt, especially in the new industry. SaaS tech can be very daunting. And for, I'm sure, a lot of people on this webinar, they're new to their roles, and it can be really scary. First starting out in sales, you have positive calls, you have not so positive calls. We all have them. I used to put the positive calls down to luck, and naturally focus on those negative calls more, which we all naturally do, is focus on the negative more than the positive. I'm sure this resonates with a lot of people having those negative and positive calls, and also putting the positive calls down to luck. Likewise, moving into a more senior role here at Spill, I sort of said to myself, am I ready for this? Like, do I have enough experience for this? And always doubted myself. Whereas actually, everybody on this call was employed for a reason. The interview process for a lot of, especially like Venatrix's interview process, is tough. And you did well, and you're in that role for a reason, right? So I think moving into a new role can be really tough. And then lastly, I had an experience in my last company where I had a colleague who was older than me, more experienced than me. And that often made me doubt myself. But we're all at different stages. And in an SDR role, like has been mentioned already today, some people are fresh out of uni, some people haven't been to uni, some people it's a career change, and we're all at different stages. I think this can be quite a common feeling that people at different ages are at different places to you. So then how have I managed these unhelpful thoughts? Obviously working for a company like Spill in mental health, and having those ideas and opinions around me has really helped me to understand what imposter syndrome is and how to overcome it. But some key ways. So firstly, feedback. Ask for feedback and give feedback. Positive feedback and constructive criticism. Positive feedback helps you to counteract those unhelpful thoughts, makes you feel confident again. Similarly, constructive criticism can make you understand that the feelings that you are feeling are a lot worse than it actually is. And it can give you areas to focus on that are true, and real areas of improvement. And then I think it's also really important to recognize that salespeople have good and bad weeks. We all like the good and bad calls. Some weeks are better than others. It's not, if you're persistent and you're consistent, the good things will come. So not to doubt yourselves in those bad weeks, but just to keep going. Also trying to reframe how we think about how we look at success. We've all got targets, whether it's discovery meetings booked, demos booked, opportunities made. Instead of just focusing on those targets, which yes, they are important, to focus on some of the good calls that may not have led to a meeting booked. You've had that good call, you've had that positive conversation, and celebrating it and seeing the good in it. It's a skill to be talking to people. Like everybody on here's got these personal skills, right? And I think we should really celebrate those more positive calls that they're not interested, it's not the right time, they don't have budget, but you had a good conversation with somebody and you built up that trust. And I think it's important to just reframe that success and see the direction that you're going. You're having better calls, that everything's increasing, but don't just focus on that negative, because it is really easy to do, and I'm so guilty for it. And then also accepting that you don't know everything, and you're not going to know everything. You're new to sales. I certainly don't. Like, even being in, I mean, I've been in sales for a year and a half, and I'm now managing a team. I certainly don't know everything. I still go to all of these webinars. I still learn new things all the time. But when you're first starting out, it's okay to say, I don't know. Say it. Firstly, it takes a weight off your shoulders to not feel like you have to know, and other people are also not going to know. So ask questions. And yeah, it's fine to say that you don't know if you're in a new industry and you're in a new role. And then lastly, this might be a bit of a controversial one, but try and limit your use of LinkedIn. I've been through stages where I've been obsessed with LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is so valuable to us, right? For us SDRs and our salespeople. Like in my last job, most of my outbound leads came from LinkedIn. However, there's a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. Everyone on social media posts the best of themselves. And it's the same on LinkedIn. If you're worrying that you're not doing as well as somebody that you're seeing on LinkedIn, chances are they're not posting about their bad days as much as they're posting about their good days. So yeah, give yourself a break. And that is everything. So thank you guys for listening. I hope I could add some value. And if you have any questions about anything, like everybody else, feel free to message me on LinkedIn.
Thank you, Corey. That's a real genuine insight into something that I think everyone faces at different stages of your career, and especially earlier on when you're trying to get to know and figure out the ropes of an organization. You're learning about new tech, you're learning about new technology, industry, ICP, processes. There's a lot going on. And I think you said it well when you said, look, it's okay not to know, and for people to say, I don't know, and to be honest. And I think advice out there, I'm 35 years old, building my own business, and I still have days of massive imposter syndrome where I just feel like a fraud and I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing. And yet the irony is that I'm promoting sales confidence. Well, sales confidence isn't about being out there all the time. You have to accept your limitations. So Chloe, that was a brilliant talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, James.
Well done. So next up, we've got Kelly Jenkins, who is the Sales Development Manager, UK and EMEA for Go1. Go1 are experts in L&D, providing professional development, well-being and compliance courses for employees of all levels. Kelly's going to be talking about combining TQ with EQ to maximize success. So she can elaborate on that as she comes up on the screen. There's certain people that we get a lot of recommendations for, and Kelly's been one that we've had a number of recommendations to speak. So I'm looking forward to having her talk today. She previously held roles at Kelleher and Plexus Law, having earned her law degree from University of West of England. It seems we've got an association of lawyers and family lawyers today, but they're all doing a great job. So Kelly, I'm going to let you speak, and here's your 7 minutes.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Sophie, and all the other speakers. Great intro, love that, lots to live up to. And yes, like many others, perhaps saw the light from a law perspective and moved into sales. So yes, I am the Sales Development Manager for the UK and EMEA. Go1 is the world's largest e-learning aggregated content library. We help organisations from SMB level up to enterprise across the globe. We're actually based out of Australia, but have offices in Malaysia, in the US, in the UK, in the Nordics and Benelux now, and soon to expand even further. So really excited to speak with you all today. A lot of my team are on this call, so big shout out to the SDR team at Go1, and they're here by their own volition rather than me telling them they need to be, so that's always nice and reassuring. So what I want to talk to you about today is combining TQ with EQ to maximize success. Now, we all know as salespeople that we love a good acronym, so I'll expand on that in a little bit. But the reason why I wanted to talk to you about this was that when I first began my sales career, emotional intelligence, or EQ, was at the top of the list when it came to the skills needed to be a successful salesperson. Essentially, being an ever-changing chameleon in a sea of prospects with varying personalities and needs was a prerequisite for success in the role. So what happened was reps began focusing on adapting to the prospect, mirroring the prospect, and building what I would call false rapport, which worked for a while, but actually quickly lost its potency. And I think as reps, and I went through this journey having been in sales now for 15 years, we sort of sat back and we're looking at, like, you know, what went wrong? And essentially what it was some reps didn't actually realize the importance of authenticity. And some were just simply unable to merge the adaptability to a prospect and authenticity effectively. Because humans are hardwired to be cynical and skeptical. It's a survival mechanism, and never is that truer than in the UK market and actually in the DACH region as well. So when you remove authenticity from a situation, you make your life as a salesperson infinitely harder. I spend a lot of time talking to my reps about being their authentic selves. And I think it's easy to look at top performers when you start as an SDR and in any sales role, and look at their actions and try and replicate them. And whilst that's not a bad place to start, it often only takes reps to about 70% of the way to success. Unless they combine that and act with authenticity, they may well only ever sit at 70% target. It's actually the reps who learn the ways of the top performers, but then manipulate those ways to best reflect their own style and personality that get to and beyond 100% to target. And in my experience, these are the people who become the true top performers of any organization. So whilst authenticity and emotional intelligence have held top spot in the skill set to be an effective salesperson to date, as we've moved further now into this digital age, it's become more and more apparent that top performers need something more than authenticity and emotional intelligence to stand out. They need technology intelligence, also known as technical quotient or TQ. The top reps of today are now combining technical agility and nimbleness with software with high EQ and authenticity to blow their targets out of the water. Quick quote for those who haven't come across TQ before. Experts define it as the capability of an individual, team, organization to use technology to make a difference. A higher TQ represents a higher ability to adapt and integrate technology than what others consider as normal or average. So with great technology and great tech stack comes great power and great possibility. In most sales organizations, you'll be equipped with a series of tools to power your performance. But using your tech stack as a means to show up and throw up on a mass scale is a recipe for not only destroying your personal brand, but also your company's brand and turning buyers off completely. True skill and performance comes from combining your TQ with your EQ to ensure your value narrative is landing at the door of your ICPs, ideally at a time that matters most. If you ring me up, I get a number of cold calls, which is great because it's great learning for me, always training. I'm always seeing, what's working out there. I always take them. So if you ring me up and you try and sell me a subscription to a meat-based meal service, it is never going to be a good time to call me. I'm a vegetarian. If, however, you're trying to sell me a car, it's worth knowing when I bought my last, how often on average I switch it up, and what I've been buying over the last decade. Chet Holmes, an author, said that 3% of people in most markets are actively buying, whereas 40% of your prospects are susceptible to looking and potentially poised to switch. Anyone can get to the 3%. It's how well you get to the 40% and shape their buying vision that determines your success with outbound. And I agree. So once you've got your ICPs and your customer personas, you've got to leverage your business intelligent platforms like LinkedIn Sales Navigator, like Bombora, to identify the people who may well want to buy from you. These are the people who need the hyper-personalization. The rest, the extra percentage, those at the very top of the funnel, will do well with the generic sequences, just ticking away in the background. And this is the epitome of being truly successful, which is the ability to detach your productivity from your time. So those fully and semi-automated sequences, moving the top of the funnel prospects through the buying journey, this is where you make money in your sleep, warming the hot, the cold into warm, and making quantum leaps in your time to revenue. So the other 43%, that 3% that are looking and the 40% that you can influence, these are the ones that, as the legendary Mary Lou Tyler said, show them that you know them right from the very beginning. Some of you may be lucky enough to be sat with a tech stack that already uses AI to assess a person's personality to predict their behaviors. If you are, amazing, and I'm jealous. You're a step ahead of the game in terms of combining TQ with EQ. But if you're not, like most of us, then it's not a problem. You just must prepare to get yourself immersed. Showing someone that you know them doesn't in a manner that doesn't read as salesy is the absolute key. It's a true skill. And I think it's a process that can be broken down into 3 stages. The first is the company. So many people don't do enough research on the company. And I don't just mean what the company does, makes, produces. You've got to go deeper than that. You're looking at the values that the company perpetuates, because those values inform the culture of the business, which informs the tone of voice of the business, and inevitably, rightly or wrongly, informs the hiring process and therefore the people you'll be speaking with. To understand the tone of the voice of a company and utilize that as part of your hyper-personalization will take you one step closer to a meaningful conversation. Of course, don't overlook things like environmental and economic changes that might be affecting the business, reputational issues, regulatory requirements, and any trigger events. You know the drill. The second part is the role. As part of any enablement piece, any training you've been through in your role, you'll get to grips with your ICP and your customer personas, and most of you are going to know those inside out. But not all roles are created equal. Find the job description of the people that you're speaking to. They'll be out there, I promise you, it's on the internet. Look at their KPIs, look at what's driving them and their performance. Who do they report to? Can you multi-thread those people into a conversation or a sequence? And lastly, look at the person themselves. For the person, we're looking at analysing publicly available data. So LinkedIn, blogs, articles, social media, and then leveraging those insights to push relevant, and that's the key, relevant personalisation to your customer personas. Once you've got all this genuine insight, what next? Your approach at this point is critical. I've received a lot of outbound interruptions which miss the mark. Over familiarity is going to go straight into the junk folder or straight into the bin, as will that generic malaligned insight. And of course, anything that focuses on the writer rather than the recipient. It's been said before, but it absolutely bears repeating. All communication must be relentlessly about your target persona. Don't just think about their role. Go a step further. Think about how you can convey that they can do their job more effectively and efficiently. How can you make their lives easier? And then use your insights to briefly communicate with them. Being confident, yet combining that with humility is key. Thinking and writing in sentences rather than paragraphs. The best emails, they say, can be read in 20 seconds. Think about that. Write conversationally. Write in the tone of voice of the business. Before you start, also think about leveraging your tech stack. Can you analyze previous conversations? Do you have a conversation analytics platform like Gong? Can you look at what question styles worked previously for your colleagues, maybe even for that account? Listen to the pitch, check out the listening ratio, then also combine that then with sequence touch patterns which have worked for colleagues before you. This is optimizing your chances of success. Imagine gathering this intel across verticals, segments, regions, and then constantly having new iterations of this in analysis, in constant review. Which brings me on to my next point. No matter how much you've analysed, A/B test everything, like literally everything, from your scripts, your LinkedIn voice notes, your voicemails, your door-to-door approach, your gatekeeper dance, but especially your emails. And remember, the landscape changes on an almost daily basis. And don't overlook the finer details. You know, I've seen reps spending hours on crafting these beautiful emails. You know, they combine brevity, relative insight, they've got the right tone of voice, and then the subject line is like flat. It doesn't matter how good your email is if they're not clicking into it. What subject lines are you using at the moment? Have you tried any of these? Song lyrics, humor, quotes from your prospect, a formal single sentence, one word. What about misspelling? Who's trialing that? Because analytics say this actually performs better because it looks human and not sequenced. And perhaps most importantly of all, are your emails mobile responsive? So in summary, unfortunately, our tech stack has not yet evolved to the point of discerning the most successful messaging and then directing all prospects down a determined path in an automated way, nor can it effectively cross-analyze platform metrics if they're not owned by the same company and provide vertical or segment-specific playbooks for you to follow. Right now, that's still within our hands, and we are essentially the orchestrators of this hybrid human-tech symphony. And whilst the future will undoubtedly move that way, and our tech will not only bucket our prospects into the right sequencing based on performance, it will also then take our analytics to another level and discern for us between those false proxies, those vanity metrics like high open rates and high rejection, and also reply rates, which could mean anything from thanks, but no thanks, or out of office and no actual indication of success. But in the meantime, I truly believe that being the conductor of this hybrid human tech orchestra holds so much opportunity, and it elevates in a very exciting way the role of the SDR beyond my pet hate phrase of cold caller, because you are not just a cold caller. That is not it. It actually elevates it to more of an operational role. Those people, those reps who can optimize the sequences through cross-platform data analysis, automate workflows within their CRMs, and inject truly human interaction at the appropriate moment will be the overperformance in the SDR world. And excitingly, the future SDR leaders every sales organization needs. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kelly. That was fantastic. And just to reiterate James's point earlier, we do get asked for Kelly to speak a lot at these events, and we also place SDRs with Kelly. And the feedback that we get from candidates who interview with her is always that they really want to work at Go1 because she is just so inspiring and they feel like they could learn so much from her. So we're very proud that you have spoken at the event today. So thank you very much. So now it is time for our final speaker of the event. And this is the Director of Business Development for EMEA for an organization called HighSpot. So we've got Charlotte on the screen with us now. Welcome, Charlotte, and thank you very much for joining us. So Charlotte has had a career in sales. She started in sports sales for the NFL and then worked at Dataminer and Unity Technologies. And she is now HighSpot's business development director, leading the managers in EMEA right in the heart of their go-to-market strategy. For those of you that don't know, HighSpot is a SaaS organization that help companies worldwide improve the performance of their sales teams. So Charlotte is also going to be talking about a very important subject that we do see so many reps posting about on LinkedIn, and that is managing burnout. But she's going to talk about it from the perspective of managing burnout within your sales teams. So at the moment, burnout is being recorded at record rates, even more so than it was at the height of the pandemic in 2020. So what better time than for us to listen to talk about this? So Charlotte, thank you very much again. Over to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Soph. Before I kick off, guys, I just want to say a massive thanks to James and to Sophie for putting on another amazing event. I've already learned so much from a really, really cool lineup of speakers, some really cool stories, some really cool pro tips here and there. So just hoping I can add my 2 cents here. What I'm going to speak to you guys about today, as Sophie mentioned, 2 challenges that I've seen super prevalent, especially within the ADR function, pretty much throughout my entire career within sales and sales development. So the first challenge that I want to kind of dig into is burnout. What is burnout, right? So as of now, burnout is defined as the exhaustion of physical or emotional strength, usually as a result of a prolonged stress or frustration, right? And the ADR role, the SDR role, whatever you guys might call it, is stressful. It is frustrating, right? You've got targets to hit. You've got KPIs to hit on a quarterly, monthly, weekly basis. You've got people to chase. You know, you can't always control your controllables. It gets frustrating, right? So that's challenge number 1 that I want to kind of dig into. Challenge number 2 is high performance expectations. I mean, even, you know, having 200 people on this call right now speaks for itself. 5 years ago, how many SDRs were there around globally? Probably in the hundreds, right? So the industry is exploding. Your products, your markets are getting saturated. Targets are going up, right? So putting together burnout together with high performance expectations, quite a dangerous combination, right? So today I just kind of want to speak about how I've dealt with it in my past. I've dealt with it in a professional burnout sense. And by no means is there one golden bullet or a one size fits all. But the way that I kind of took to it is I try to drive consistent execution, right? And by now I'm sure half of you guys are rolling your eyes and you're like, oh yeah, Charlotte, like if I could, you know, if it was that easy to drive consistent execution, if it was that easy to hit my target consistently, like I would do it, right? Trust me. So how do I start driving consistent execution, right? How do you get the ball rolling? The way that I got the ball rolling was the 1% better every day rule, right? So I said to myself, hey, small steps, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. If I am 1% better every single day, I'm going to end up 37 times better within a 1-year time period. And that's a fact, right? So 1% better every day means you're 37 times better within 1 year, 365 days a year. How long, what's the average ADR time span? 1 to 2 years. Imagine the difference that could make if you pushed yourself 1% every day, right? So sorry to say there's no magic formula if that's what you were hoping for. At least I don't know if any, if you know any, let me know. I'd love to hear it as well. But how did I, back in the day, how did I drive that 1% better every day, right? So there's 3 steps that I want to focus on and some kind of hopefully gold nuggets in between for you guys to use as well. So the first thing I did is understanding my strengths, right? Hey, what am I really good at? Am I good at cold calling? Am I good at emailing? Is it videos? Is it voice notes? Where do most of my SQLs right now that I'm creating come from, right? So let's say you've created 10 SQLs this month or 10 opportunities, whatever you call it. Where did they come from? What was the source? Was it marketing, cold calling, emailing? Nothing, don't do anything with that data. Just know that it exists, right? Once you figure that out, take a step back and just say, hey, ballpark, how much time am I spending on all of these items, right? How much time on a daily basis am I cold calling? Am I spending on emails? Am I sending videos, right? Again, don't do anything with it, but just be aware, right? Of, okay, this is what you're doing. And if you don't have any structure right now, if you're hitting your target with working 2 hours a day, that's fine, right? But just bucket it, put your thoughts on a paper. Once you've done that, start to compare that to industry averages, right? So if it's taking you as of now 50 videos to convert into 1 discovery call, but the industry average says, hey, it should probably only take you 15 or 20, totally fine, right? That's an area of development for you. Just jot it down, right? So step number one, understand your strength and understand your areas of development, right? Once you've done that, or what I did was build out my schedule and stuck to it, right? That is the toughest part by far for this 1% rule, is not building a schedule, but sticking to it, right? Like, let's say you're going on a lunch break, it's summer, it's nice out in the UK, pretend maybe you had a glass of rosé, you come back, the next thing on your schedule is a 1-hour prospecting session, right? Like, no one wants to do that, but I promise you, if you build it out in the right mindset, to hold yourself accountable, do the work that needs to be done, it's really good for the long run, right? So when you're building out your schedule, what I thought I'd do, I'd give a couple of tips of what worked really well for me. 4 of them. So the first one is what we call at high spot and on the fly, right? So prospects right now are busier than ever, right? That's no secret. So 2 ways to do on the fly. So one is you're cold calling someone, rather than asking time to schedule a discovery call, which is an additional step before you pass something along to the AE, try to qualify them right then and there, right? So, hey, James, I call you out of the blue. Do you have 30 seconds for me to tell you why I'm calling? Do your opener, ask for the time, right? Get them hooked. And once they've accepted your calendar invite, first thing, say, hey, just before I let you go, so we can make the next conversation as relevant as possible, how many people do you have on your team, right? Or what tools are you currently using? Qualify there so that you don't have an extra step. So that hard-fought diary time that you have right now isn't utilized discoing again, right? So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, put in public time for balance, right? Put in some time that says, hey, this is my 2 hours a day. This is an hour a day where I'm going to be out for a walk, right? Don't be ashamed to say, hey, don't contact me, I'm out for work. If that's good for your soul, if that's going to put you in the right mindset to be as productive as possible when you come back to achieve all of your other laid out activities, totally fine. Do it that way, right? Tip number 3, one of my favorites, best practices, right? So 2 types of best practices. One is obviously with top performers on a weekly basis. What most of the speakers said before me as well, what worked yesterday might not work today. We just heard is what worked yesterday might not work today, right? So if last week cold calling worked really well, but this week one of your colleagues is smashing it out doing videos, set up a best practice session, right? Put that time in the diary that just to kind of go through, hey, what's working, what's not working. And my personal second favorite, I'll get to my favorite after this, is holding yourself accountable, right? backwards engineer your targets. If it's quarterly, hey, what's my monthly? What's my weekly target, right? If by Wednesday afternoon, you realize, hey, I'm pacing behind my weekly target right now, or I'm starting to, super small, not a problem. Put in some time with your manager, put in a best practice session to try and nip it in the bud as early as possible, rather than it getting to the end of the week and you saying, oh, should have maybe done that, right? So be accountable, hold yourself accountable and take charge of your time. And lastly, my favorite is add goals to your sessions, right? All good and well if you put in an hour prospecting session. Even better if you say, hey, at the beginning of the week, during this session on Tuesday after lunch, during my 1 hour prospecting session, I want to find 30 people with a direct dial based in the Americas, right? Or whatever your criteria might be, so that you hold yourself accountable to, okay, this is what this time is for, and this is what I'm going to strive to and try to focus on, right? Rather than saying, okay, fine, I guess I'll prospect, and by the end of an hour, you got 3 or 4 prospects, fine, right? That's fine, but hold yourself accountable, put a higher standard in there. Last but not least, step number 3, let's tie it all together with the 1% rule. Add 1%, right? So let's say you're just about, you shut your laptop, you've had a really good day or you've had a really bad day. You want to head off to the pint, you've got plans. I would encourage you guys to just put in those 15 or 20 minutes at the end of the day to make those literally like 10 extra calls or 10 extra emails, 10 extra videos, whatever it might be. To push yourself, right? Statistically speaking, every 27 cold calls right now gives you 1 discovery call, right? So if you did 10 more calls within 10 to 15 minutes every day, that's 1.5 more discovery calls a week, right? That adds up. If you hold that up, that adds up. That can get you to target. That can get you to overachieve, right? So just add, once you've mapped out your schedule, 15, 20 extra minutes a day where you start to push yourself, right? So now what we've got, okay, you know your strength, you've built and mapped out your schedule accordingly, and you've put in that extra little push every day, right? So, and I'll leave you with one of my favorite analogies that kind of does all of this. I'd love to know right now how many people on this meeting have either iPhones or Samsungs. Wild guess, it's probably quite a lot of you. When I was growing up, it was the cool thing to have, right? Was Motorola's or Nokia's, Blackberries. And the businesses back at the time thought, hey guys, like, kick back, right? Relax, like business is booming. I don't need to do anything else. Blink of an eye, Apple comes along, cool smartphone features, touch screen, iMessage, and suddenly those companies have lost pretty much the entirety of their market share, right? And now what you've got is that rather than making a change when you're up here, they've gone down here just like an ADR, super normal. Everyone goes through the dips, right? So now they're down here, and guess what? They have to work 4, 6, 8 times harder to just get back up there than if they would have just said, okay, I'm going well, what can we improve for the future, right? And it's the same with the ADR role. To avoid burnout, essentially, what do you do? Mix it up, keep your mind rolling, add 1% every day, work a little bit more every day rather than leaving it too late and then being like, okay, now I have to work the entirety of the day and I need to work, through the hours. It's not feasible. It's not healthy. So I'd encourage you guys, just before you want to shut your laptop, just think, if I make 10 more calls now, even if they're all bad calls, at least you can qualify out, right? Just that little extra bit of push. And key takeaways, right? So if hopefully you guys, took a little like kind of key nuggets there and there, if I had to break it down into 5, understand your strength versus industry best practices, make goals for your sessions, build out a schedule and allow time for you, right? Like don't be ashamed to put in, hey, I'm out for a walk, or hey, I'm at a gym class. That's great. If that helps you, food for thought, that's amazing. Do that. Go the extra mile when things are going well, not when they're not. And hopefully it goes without saying, guys, but if you feel burnout, ask for help, right? We all go through it. There's nothing to be ashamed of. But that's it. So hopefully there were some little tips and tricks for you guys. If you've got any questions, obviously feel free to reach out. If you can't find my contact details, you might be in the wrong role, but feel free to find me on LinkedIn and connect.
Love that. Thank you so much, Charlotte. I absolutely love it when the speeches have lots of practical tips that people can put into practice and use day to day. So now we're going to move into the Q&A session, which is where everybody's going to have the opportunity to post any questions that they want to ask in the comments. And we're going to hear more from our speakers. So first of all, thank you so much, guys. Those speeches were fantastic. I know that it takes a lot of effort to put a 7-minute speech together, and it can also be super nerve-wracking speaking in front of so many people, but you all did a fantastic job and we really, really appreciate it. So I want to kick things off by talking a bit about understanding your strengths. So that's something that I think Charlotte and Em both touched on in your talks. I think one of the difficulties that SDRs have, and certainly a lot of SDRs that I speak to, is where do you actually start when you go on the quest to understand what your strengths are, and how do you get to a place where you really have a clear understanding of what you're good at and what you need to work on? So have you got any advice for any SDRs that want to understand what their strengths are but feel overwhelmed by that process and don't know how to actually start with that process?
Is this just for Charlotte, or could I just jump in?
All of you, yeah, for
Perfect.
anyone.
I was just going to say, like, as Charlotte said, I think, like, you can break it down by just looking through your emails, through your call logs and things like that, and determine what worked in that way. But also, like, ask your teammates, ask your manager, ask everyone, because I know that, like, throughout our team, everyone's got, like, one kind of strength, like, in particular that stands out to us, and it tends to be the same across the team. Like, if you say, oh, what do they do? Well, everyone will be like, oh, LinkedIn. It kind of, if that's like their key kind of strength, like it will kind of be highlighted within
The obvious.
the team.
Yeah.
I think it kind of comes a lot with being your authentic self, as Kelly was saying. Like, when we go into sales, we're scared because, you know, we're the junior guys coming into the business, and there's so many guys above us, and we're taught to work in a certain way, to everyone's saying to structure your emails in a certain way and do your calls in a certain way. And I think as you get more confident with that, you're a bit more relaxed to start trying things out yourself and start putting your personal twist onto things. And I think as you do that more and more, it's a bit of a journey of allowing yourself to do that, but also then learning what you're really good at. Like, when I was a BDR, my thing was always writing a story when I was writing an email to like these big corporations and getting meetings. And I'd like write this ridiculous story. My first email would always get a meeting. But when I went into sales, I wasn't encouraged to work like that and told that everything I did was a really long email. But, you know, sometimes it works. And I think you just have to be brave enough to kind of to find that, and it comes in time.
Okay, awesome. And personalization is something as well that's a very hot topic at the moment. I think, Amy, you saw my LinkedIn post earlier. And I think that comes with the different channels, obviously, that SDRs can use. There's so many now that you can use to reach out to prospects. Have you got any advice for the SDRs on this call of how to manage those different channels, and also a bit of insight into what ones you use the most? So are you mainly calling prospects? Are you mainly using LinkedIn, email? How would you say that you divide those up?
I mean, for me, like, I know that emails work quite well for me, so I kind of had a decent focus on that. But in our team, even we would do cold call blitzes, so we increased that, and I think all of us saw quite a quick return on that. And I personally have found that, like, cold calls, but then information being passed along or following up with an email, and that email being passed along recently, that has been kind of what's booked like a good chunk of my meetings. So it's like that multi-threading piece, trying to use each different channel to the best of its ability and not neglect one.
And how much time do you guys actually spend on LinkedIn?
Too much.
And how important is having a LinkedIn strategy to you?
I think you need to build your personal brand. I always thought that was really important, and it helped me massively. My first year, most of my outbound stuff came from LinkedIn. But like I said, like I just think there's a line with it, and you don't want to get too obsessed with it. Like I found myself flicking backwards and forwards from it a lot, so I do delete the tab and work. But LinkedIn is so important. But it's like what Armani said earlier, like you need those multiple channels in your sequence, because some prospects react in different ways to others. You might not have phone numbers for some people. Some people just don't answer their phone. But yeah, I think for me personally, phone calling and LinkedIn, but all three of them deliver for different people. So
I would
I'd
agree
answer
with that. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to add, I would 100% agree with that. I think the best outreach I've ever gotten, because on LinkedIn, people like the post and comment on posts that they're genuinely interested in, whether it be personal or professional. The best outreach I get is people saying, hey, Charlotte, I saw you like this post. Funny that you liked it, because actually HighSpot helps you do X, Y, Z, right? So like actually going into the prospect's activity and seeing, the comments and the like posts is probably as relevant as like an outreach method can get.
Okay. And Amarni, you talked about personalization, and with regards to researching prospects ahead of getting in touch with them, where would you advise SDRs to start with that?
I don't think there's any kind of perfect place to start. The way that I like to do, obviously, I said I like to kind of set a timer, because there's, especially the companies that I target, there's so much information out there. You can very easily get overwhelmed. I think your usual places are always, LinkedIn, on their website, any of the posts that they've recently done, what kind of content are they engaging with. But I also like to kind of personalize based on the actual person rather than just the company. Having a look at their Twitter is a really, really, really good place to kind of see the slightly more informal stuff that might make them go, oh, okay, I'll have a quick look at that email. They've done their research. So I think looking across all of those channels, just try not to get sort of too overwhelmed by all the information. That's why I think setting the timer is such a good thing, because you're almost there like, okay, I know I need to use that. I know I can use that. Like, I won't try and look for like all of the perfect information. I'll just kind of stick with what's going to get me kind of the best return on the email.
And how do you put it towards the prospect in a way that comes across like you are genuinely trying to solve a problem versus just, mentioning something that you've read to show that you've done your research?
Yeah, I think the email fundamentally has to be about them. I don't think that emails, particularly for our product, should really talk about, the way that we solve that problem as much. I think it should kind of be, here's a bit of research that I've done. Here's a similar thing that I've seen with customers like that and problems that tend to come from that. Are you open to a solution like this? Might be something that comes down the line. So kind of really trying to transition that research into a value prop for them or a challenge that they might be facing. That's what I find really, really resonates well with personas.
Okay. And how much is too much? So Kelly, you talked about, looking at anything that is publicly available online. Is it too much to like look at them on Facebook, for example, and mention something that you saw there?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it depends on who you ask, right? If you're asking for my specific opinion, yes, there is a line, absolutely. We have to be mindful of people's privacy. Yes, it's in the public domain, and yes, it's publicly available. But at the same time, I don't want necessarily someone quoting my daughter's name back to me in an email. That hasn't happened. But if it were to happen, you're being blocked immediately. So I think always use a level of common sense, okay? So yes, if you find an insight that maybe gives you, I'm a huge believer in personality assessment and analysis, and I think there's a long way that you can go with that. And if you use something like Crystal Knows, that will get you X amount of the way to analysing personality. Not everyone has access to that, but some of these insights will give you a little bit of an insight into someone's life. It's not about using them directly. It's about utilising that and using your emotional intelligence to then frame the way you're talking to them in the right way and putting that across. So yes, they are useful, but directly, no.
Okay. And you spoke a lot about tech stacks. This question is for all of you. Have you got any pieces of technology that you absolutely could not live without day to day?
All of them.
I know I spoke about it a bit in my speech, but Vidu is honestly amazing. Like, have a look at the website and just see like the way that it looks. It's such a quick and easy way to stand out in an email and kind of, your face is in it. It looks really personalized. You include their name, and I think it makes people just take a second look because it's not as common. You know, everyone's seen a video, everyone's seen an email, but when it's that kind of style of GIF, it is just really cool. Just give it a go. At the very least, you'll find it really fun, but I don't really send out many emails without one, so it's really
Okay. And I think you spoke about personalized gifts. What type of things do you actually send?
So it depends. Like, it depends on the value prop I'm going for. So I've sent a few like kind of gifts focused around like a big headache when it comes to like tax. That's one of our big value props. Or just as simple as like holding up a picture of their website and kind of making a few kind of gestures like towards it, like thumbs up or stuff like that. It just really like is different to all of these other emails that they're getting. It's just that tiny bit of difference.
Mm-hmm. Any other technology that you couldn't live without, guys?
Gong every single
Gong.
day. Yeah, I live in Gong. I think from a team management perspective, it's absolutely the place that's going to give you a huge degree of insight. But as an SDR as well, regardless of where you are in your journey, whether it's right at the beginning, you should be constantly listening to Gong. Like, carve out time in your day to listen to not only your own calls back. Everyone hates the sound of their own voice, right? It's like, I don't sound like that. That's so hard. Like, really? Ugh, how do people even listen to me? But get past that, because actually listening to yourself back, you'll be able to analyze yourself. And if you can get to that point, then you're going to infinitely improve your sort of performance and your scope. And also listen to those people around you as well. Listen to the high performers. What are they doing? Like I said earlier, it's not just about what they're saying, it's how they're saying it. Where are they pausing? What's the intonation? What's the tonality? Of course, the discovery questions are really important, but you need to get past the first 20 or 30 seconds first. So yeah, I think Gong is absolutely invaluable. They haven't paid me to say this, but I absolutely them.
I'm trying to win them as a client at the moment. So if anybody from Gong is on this call, please add me on LinkedIn and let's chat. Any others before I move on to the questions that our audience have asked?
I was just going to say outreach. Like, I've never worked in a job. I mean, outreach, sales loft, one of those kind of tools. I'm assuming most people use one of them. But because this is my first sales role, SDR role, everything, I've never had a job without it. But some of my teammates who haven't had it before are just like, it's a game changer, because you just cannot ad hoc like call people up, be like, oh, I sent you an email like 3 months ago now. Do you want to chat again? Like, it doesn't work. You can't stay on top of everyone, and you just can't do things at scale, I can imagine. You'd have to have one heck of a spreadsheet. So
I've lived without it, Amy, and it was one heck of a spreadsheet. When I joined Spill and I was choosing the tech stack, I was like, no way are we not having either of those. It's not good.
Okay, so we've got a question here from Maria Perlman, which I think is a fantastic question. If you could define the BDR from the future, what would you say would be the 3 most important qualities for the BDR to have?
TQ is number one. Being able to leverage your tech stack is absolutely imperative. We're becoming more sort of part human, part machine as time goes on. Look at that as possibility rather than being a scary proposition. Think Tony Stark. We should be wearing it like an exoskeleton, our tech stack, and I could wax lyrical about that for hours. But over and above TQ, EQ will always be a forerunner in terms of skill set. And then, of course, it's, for me, all day long, it's work ethic. You've got to be prepared to roll up your sleeves and get really comfortable with monotony as well. That's not necessarily a very popular thing to say, but you're going to be doing similar things day in, day out. The people who really succeed are the people who are like, I'm okay with this process. Like, I know what I'm supposed to do. Yeah, we inject creativity and we have loads of fun with it, but be prepared that you will be doing the same thing every day. And that's what makes a really successful person, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. What does everybody else think?
I think just kind of building on one of the things you mentioned there, Kelly, about work ethic, I think consistency, like kind of narrowing that down is one of the most important things, not just as a BDR, but as you move up through the chain, even down to, hearing really successful founders and CEOs, just being consistent, keep putting yourself out there, keep trying all these channels, keep doing kind of the day-to-day stuff. I think that's what really will win out as a BDR of the future, and kind of stand out amongst, the other reps and other companies.
I'm just going to interrupt because we've come up to time. It's been an overwhelming response from the audience. So I just want to pass our thanks to Sophie for being an excellent co-host. It really makes my life a lot easier to have someone to do this with. So thank you, Sophie, for
Thank you for having me.
coordinating and helping organise today's event. And thank you to the Venatrix team for promoting and jointly promoting sales confidence. And then really a round of applause to each of you as speakers. Like, this wouldn't be possible without you. And I'm really grateful for your time and effort. I know some of you are dialing in from different rooms, bedrooms, from different parts of the world to be here today. So thank you very much. Everything's recorded, so it will be uploaded to the Sales Confidence YouTube channel next week, and there will be a follow-up email to everybody. So that is a wrap. Thank you for all your engagement, and thank you everybody again. Cheers.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you.